sufficiently second or first guessing as well as it should, presumably. So the question is, what would be the advantage? I understand it's second guessing what the Coastal Commission is going to do or not do is one thing, but if we move forward with these requests, and then we have a whole bunch of projects just coming up and hitting the wall one after the other, I mean, we could have a real train wreck here. So strategically, forget about the cost of doing all this or moving forward, the cost to the people that spend $800,000 on doing all the preliminary work. So I'm really asking for a scenario here that avoids what we have going on right at this moment here, where it's just an ordinary school building project that suddenly has discovered there's a Coastal Commission staff set of objections, and it's so with regard to the coastal plan update, what do we gain by moving things forward, or just saying hold off until we get things sorted out? Are we going to work the coastal plan update around the configuration of projects we have here, do it inductively? In other words, we have a bunch of things here that won't fit into it, so we build our coastal plan update to fit in so that they merge, so they interpenetrate each other.
If that's a question, I wouldn't necessarily say that you build your local coastal plan around the projects.
Well, you shouldn't, but but that's where we might be backing ourselves into as
well. Or maybe looking at it a different way. You do with the local coastal plan what we did with the general plan updates, which is you say we're engaging in this coastal plan update. Everybody get in your requests, and then they get reviewed against consistency with the input that it couldn't be done at the beginning of the local coastal plan update. It would have to be done similar to what we did with the general plan towards the midpoint or end of that process, where you'd gotten your public input, you had a sense of direction on that local coastal plan and what the principles were, et cetera. Then when you have that framework, you could solicit plan amendments at that point, and then they get reviewed by the planning team similarly to the way we did it with the general plan for consistency, islands, you remember that whole discussion. And some of it could get built into the local coastal plan update, and some of it, the conclusion would be, they still need to pursue an EIR process outside of that. So that's one thing you could do.
Then commission review and approval. Right. But what you've just said here, this last couple of sentences, says that's way out there.
Yeah,
that's way out there.
That doesn't take care of the next couple of years.
That's very optimistic, I would say, in terms of a couple of years. Okay, yeah. That's.
But I think you've kind of described that catch-22.
Well, yeah. Oh, and to go back to the general plan, you say a draft will be available at the end of June, as it now stands.
Yes.
In general, a draft will be available. What are we looking at in terms of finalization or for the draft to be reviewed? And at what point then we'll come back to the board at this point for approval?
Okay.
Just projecting.
Okay, general plan public review draft should be available by the end of June. Then in July, there would be 2 planning commission hearings, because I'm thinking it will take 2. And then August 18th, it's the Board of Supervisors hearing.
Right.
And that coincides with the close of the public review period. And then the consultants take all of the input that they've gotten, and I assume that it will be voluminous, and they work it in as they got direction from you, the board, as they heard from the community endorsed by the board, et cetera. And then they come up with the final draft, and the final draft, the public hearing for the board to approve, I didn't bring the full timeline with me, but the general plan, public hearing. At that point, general plan and UVAP kind of switch. The public hearing for the final general plan, NEIR, is October. And the one for UVAP is November. So that's what we're looking at. But in both cases, the whole process of it being certified, sent to the state, et cetera, will be complete by the end of the year.
Supervisor.
If the UVAP is actually part of the general plan, how can the UVAP approval be after the general plan?
Well, it's a component. I mean, basically, they're on parallel tracks. And we allowed for a little bit more time for taking all the public comments from UVAP because we're thinking that that's going to be fairly extensive. And the general plan also has gone through the planning commission more intensively a year ago. But, I mean, we'll see.
But that's like approving the whole piece and then assuming that
Yeah.
a part's gonna,
It's two.
shouldn't it be that you approve the pieces before you
Yeah.
approve the whole
It's
pie?
it's two separate approvals, so you can do them at different times.
Is that right, Frank?
In the parlance of the planners, the UVAP area is white-holed. It's essentially going to be a little carve-out from the rest of the general plan. And after the UVAP is approved, you won't go to the general plan. Typically, you'll go to the UVAP itself, which will, just as you do with the LCP for the coastal area as opposed to the inland general plan. It really will, it has to be consistent with the general plan, but it will have policies that are specific to the Ukiah Valley.
But you are right. I made that argument many, many times to no avail, but you're right. Logically, you are correct.
And I'll say, if the timeframes are such that we can switch them, a public hearing is a public hearing, you're gonna have to show up either way, so if the timeframes line up differently, we can do that.
Anything additional for Ms. Classen? Quite a lengthy report. It's been a while since we've heard, and we need to work towards a more timely report and keep it a little shorter, I think. So
I realize it's a long day, and I apologize, but it did seem like there was a lot of information
Oh,
that
yeah?
you need to hear. So if I could say what I'm hearing from this, I'm not getting a clear sense of one direction or another in terms of processing coastal plan amendment requests, regardless of the possible reception from the Coastal Commission, or culling out those that don't increase density and moving those forward regardless, or some other variation on that.
All right, I have some comments, but Supervisor Colfax first.
Well, I just have a hard time seeing how we can move forward in an efficient manner, whether it's for us or the applicant or whatever. But I have a hard time seeing how we can move forward with these requests if we don't, when the Coastal Commission is saying you have to have an approved coastal plan update in place. It's much the same way as with regard to Mendocino Town Plan. So you've got a bunch of people that are just sitting over there feeling god-awful frustrated over the years. And there's a catch-22 there that has just been a thorn, at least in some people's side. And I see the same thing happening here. So that's why I'm saying we need a strategy so we don't spend this time kind of making people spin around and do dances when in fact they're not. The truth is we don't have a real way out of this until we get the approval of the Coastal Commission in Mendocino Village and the coastal plan. And both of those are, well, at least the second one is enormous. The other one is going to die of old age, if nothing else.